All right, this is Rudkowski of WeAreChange.org, and of course, everyone today is talking about the latest events that just unfolded in Charlottesville, Virginia. Today, we have a very special guest who is there on the ground and will actually give us a perspective that's not biased either on the left or on the right. And on today's broadcast, we had Ford Fisher, editor-in-chief of News to Share. His link will be in the description below. He was there on the ground today. And Ford, first of all, I have to ask you, how are you and what happened today from your perspective? There's a lot to take in here, but coming from an independent perspective, how did you see everything unfold today?
So first of all, physically, I'm fine. I had a few pepper spray burns, actually from both sides. So you're talking about independent not being left or right. I got attacked by both of them, or at least in the crosshairs of the crossfire of both of them, so to speak. The main thing, the sort of most breaking news out of today was that there was a car crash incident that was seemingly intentional, in which about 19 people were hit by a pileup of three different cars, one of which hit the first one intentionally. And so one person, basically I witnessed having CPR administered on her for several minutes, and it appeared that they had given up. And I reported at the time on my live stream that it appeared that she had died. And in fact, the governor confirmed that an hour later.
Wow. Yeah,
Earlier
we're also getting news right now that a police helicopter crashed and two police officers who were monitoring the whole rally also passed away. So the ramifications from this are not just going to be from the, very little. They're going to be very big, and they're going to be playing out later on. I'm sorry, continue, Ford.
So we went to the crash site, although police were stopping people from getting anywhere close enough to it to do any meaningful reporting on it. But I would note that it hasn't been confirmed that it was a police helicopter. We think it was a helicopter that was watching the people, and we think it was a police helicopter, but that actually has not been confirmed. So it is within the realm of possibility that it could have been a photographer or something associated with one of the two groups, or even with the media. But we just don't know yet. As to earlier in the day, basically there was all of the Unite the Right type people in the area that they were sort of designated to be in. And police mostly had a hands-off approach. They had set up barricades between that and then the outside protesters who were basically supposed to stay outside of the park. The problem is that, of course, the right-wingers have to walk through those protesters in order to get into the park. And so most of the violence occurred kind of at that peripheral. And that was where the militia was taking, and by that I'm talking about the Oath Keepers and the 3% type people, were trying to take a role of separating the two groups. Antifa tended to condemn them by saying, well, you're essentially defending the right-wingers, right? Whereas the militia people said, we're truly neutral. We're not attempting to help anybody. We're literally just trying to stop the violence. Part of the reason I wanted to come to this whole thing was because of that aspect. Many of these guys are veterans, and they look at a political gathering and a political gathering's counter-protest, and they're treating it like a war, and it turned out to turn into that. So I think there's a real question to be asked about how we got to this point.
Yes, there's a lot of divide and conquer. There's a lot of polarization. And a lot of people are saying that this is only the beginning of it. I mean, I've been seeing the inclinations of this from the very beginning. But from your perspective, it would be very interesting to get a critique and kind of a report on how the police acted, because we've seen from other events, like in Berkeley, where there was police and they left the scene and let these two sides fight each other, sort of like not helping in any way. We saw that repeatedly happen in other protests around the country. What did you see on the ground, and how do you think the police conducted themselves today?
Right. So mostly the police stayed uninvolved for the first couple of hours. Eventually, the barricades that they had originally set up were taken down by the Antifa. So once there was almost no physical barrier between the Antifa and the Lee Park, the police declared it to be an illegal gathering. And by the way, this was before noon. The rally was supposed to start at noon. So before the rally even started, police declared it an illegal gathering. And all kinds of violence had happened before then, and police stayed completely out of it. It was once they declared this rally is canceled that riot cops slowly, by attrition, took out the entire park. And it was at that point that I realized that was probably a mistake tactically. And the reason for that is that they ended up permeating out into the world of the sort of leftist protesters, all of these right-wing type people who now had absolutely no barrier between them and the other guys. And that caused, for miles in every direction, this fight to have expanded and become much more chaotic and confusing, whereas at least there were kind of a clear sense of this is the left-wing guy, this is the right-wing guy, right? People kind of knew what was going on. It turned into chaos once they tried to shut down the rally.
Yeah, it really doesn't make sense from a policing standpoint. I mean, I seen something very similar happen in San Diego at a Trump rally where the police decided to make one line after there was clashes. There was a clear divide. And instead of dividing the two sides from fighting each other, the police came from the other side and squished everyone together, causing everyone to even fight more against each other with just outrageous clashes. Do you think this could have been prevented today with the way that the police acted?
Yeah, so frankly, I think that if the police had taken an approach more similar to the militia, they might have stopped the violence. If they had allowed the rally to continue and basically stopped people from permeating across the two sides, basically just keep the sides separate, let them scream at each other from across layers of cops and whatever, then they could have added at least those 5 hours of the rally without a whole lot of back and forth. By the police just shutting down the rally and pushing everyone into one place, they ended up creating a situation where I posted a photo earlier on my Facebook of there was a guy who pulled his handgun out of his holster and pointed it at them.
Wow.
And granted, a lot of people were open carrying, and but having your rifle just kind of slacked over your shoulder, it's not a huge deal. But actually unholstering the handgun and pointing it above lower ready is a really provocative, right? Arguably kind of menacing act.
Yeah.
And so that sort of thing started happening once these guys started getting pushed together. And in a way, the police were, I don't want to use the word cowardly, but they would have been putting themselves on the line a little bit to get in the middle. But I think that they would have saved a lot of people from getting hurt.
Yeah. Now, online, there's a lot of finger pointing. There's a lot of blaming. There's a lot of people saying that it was people are part of the alt-right, the Unite the Right rally that were instigating the violence. Some people are saying, no, it's all because of Antifa. From being there on the ground, who was more aggressive? Who was instigating a lot of the conflict there? Was it both sides, like I personally am seeing online?
Yeah, so it tends to, I think this was probably consistent with other ones that I've seen, where generally speaking, the left wing tends to initiate the violence. The difference with this one is that the right wingers were way more prepared for it in terms of weapons and shields and things like that. So yeah, left wingers tended to be attacking. For example, the moment that I got pepper sprayed was Richard Spencer was trying to walk up to the park. He had about 8 security guys around him. There were also some Identity Europa people around him. And an Antifa just came up and tried to pepper spray the whole group, right? And so they ended up spraying me, other press, a couple of those Identity Europa guys, and I don't even think they got Spencer. But so there were a lot of things like that. But Spencer is not really a fighter. The group that was really, really, really violent, even if they didn't start it, they sure as hell tried to finish it, was the Traditionalist Workers' Party. And to people who don't know, that's a party with a National Socialist philosophy. So literally just straight up neo-Nazis under a different name. Those guys came with shields and helmets. And when Antifa went to confront them, they had pepper spray that they sprayed from behind their shields, and they were hitting people with flagstaffs. They were clearly prepared to beat the crap out of the people who opposed them, and that's exactly what they did.
Wow. Now, I'll be honest, from a political, perspective, that this is kind of a sad day in American politics,
Yeah.
with the discourse going this low, to have these kind of events unfold, especially with people dying, and especially seeing the trajectory of this even going further. But from my own personal perspective, understanding that billionaires like the Koch brothers financed the right, and then other billionaires like Soros financed the left, to me, it's not really left and right. It's really more about the billionaires, more about up and down that people should be concerned about. That's how I see it. From your understanding, from everything you went through, how do you see it, and how has being a part of today's event impacted you with your understanding of the kind of political discourse that we have in this country now?
So it's interesting because last night I saw a little bit of political discourse. I was at the UVA thing where about 250 of these alt-right guys did a rally where they held tiki torches, and it looked like a KKK styled event, and they marched through campus, and there ended up being one brawl and one arrest. They were chanting actual kind of political stuff, so to speak, and it was really, really extreme right wing, kind of what you'd expect. And then there were left wingers there who chanted the counter chants like no Trump, no KKK, no racist USA kind of stuff. So at least there was a little bit of politics there. Today was honestly just fighting. There was the speeches that the Unite the Right had planned didn't end up happening. Antifa to some degree was doing chants of Black Lives Matter, but hardly. There's pretty much no debating. If there was a confrontation, it was just kind of screaming at each other and fighting. At the end of the day, if you looked at any two people in a fight and you swapped their positions, right, it wouldn't make much of a difference. It kind of just became this homogenous, like left versus right, red versus blue, team one versus team two kind of thinking. It was kind of just pure factionalism.
Yeah, Ford Fisher of News to Share, his link will be in the description below. I want to thank you for your incredible work on the ground. All of your work will be linked so people could go check it out and subscribe to you. I will join you in the field at the next one. I promise you that. But I want to also leave you with the last word and anything else you want to say about just today and what you experienced.
So I think that what people have to look at today is how did we get to this point, right? These things aren't isolated incidents. And while the individuals who do the violence are responsible for themselves, right? I don't generally believe in kind of collective identity punishment, so to speak, right? There are lunatics in any group. But I think it's worth thinking about how we got to a point in political discourse where people feel like fighting each other on the streets is going to have some kind of a real world outcome. To the Antifa, are you really going to beat the crap or literally beat the racism out of somebody's head? I kind of doubt it. And on the right, are you really gonna defeat leftist government by beating up some random leftist on the street? Also, probably not. And that's not to say that that they're going to be able to achieve what they want through books and debates and things like that. But they're going to do a lot less damage if they pursue peaceful means to their own agendas.
Exactly. Very well said, especially with agitation, especially with trying to trigger somebody, especially with trying to be right all the time and upholding one side and not trying to see both sides of the story. Ford, I thank you for your great independent work, and I want to thank everyone for watching and subscribing. We're going to have more news coming here your way on youtube.com/WeAreChange.
All right. Thank you for having me, Luke.